Hey everyone. My name is George Abraham, in case you didn't know, and I am going to be reading some poems for you tonight via Facebook Live for Poets in Pajamas. It's an amazing reading series. Thank you to the folks over at Sundress Publications for hosting me. I'm super excited. Hopefully everyone can hear me and it's good. If you can't hear me or if anything is going wrong, please comment in the video and I can see it in live time and fix things. I'm gonna be doing a mix of some new work, some old work, some work in my chapbook Eliom, which was published by the Atlas Review this spring, actually in this past March. And some poems from projects I'm working on, including my chapbook forthcoming with Sibling Rivalry Press and full length I'm trying to work towards. So let's see. It's actually right exactly 7. So I was told to banter for a bit while people click and come on. I'm gonna go ahead and just get started and go right into it. The history goes, the first intifada was a rain of teeth. Shin Bet marveled at the beast they created and became a celebration of bullets. This Mideast Frankenstein, brown rebirth, fangs bare and dripping. I once found home in the empty between clenched jawlines, and that was a street my mother grew up, where sand N-word flew out of the mouth of a stranger who was settler in this country. That's not the point. I mean, what does an immigrant call it when they have no home to go back to? Once I wrote down history, and it was not a lie. My hands weren't dripping. I didn't create a massacre and the erasure, and a white woman called me crazy. He's just crazy, and I became body of gritted teeth, of rising smoke, exhaust from the torched city of me. Are you beside yourself yet? Have you retreated to your white God-forsaken sanctuary? Am I a security threat enough? Yet, the history goes, Israeli settler expansion was illegal under international law. Until it wasn't. That's not the point. The settlers were fleeing religious persecution, much like pilgrim settlers fled for America. I mean, what is colonization if not an aftermath of hands of men searching for home, and I am the wrong landmass to beg a home of? Just barely a floating thing. Stone who refused to dance on water. The oppressor knows not your howl. The way you splice the air, and that is freedom song video footage. Israeli soldier shoots child armed with stone, point blank. A mother shrieks miles away, collapses, empties herself of wind. I still don't know what to do with my hands in history class. I'm gonna transition now to reading from my chapbook. And I'll post a link after this is all done. If you just Google George Abraham Atlas Review, then it'll come up. I wanna read a poem that I don't usually actually read, and this is kind of a special event via Facebook Live. And this is a poem I wrote after a good friend of mine and mentor, Marwa Hilal. And her work has just undeniably had an influence on me and so many others, specifically other Middle Eastern poets in our communities. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to Marwa. This is photographs not taken. The scalpel that removed the country from my Tata's chest, rusting in the hands of a surgeon who was, perhaps, a Zionist. My mother, crossing the finish line of a marathon for breast cancer research, her cousin's name scrawled across the damp running bib. Palestinian Olympic swimmer takes gold, rewriting the ocean of history. The ghosts of refugee children make a choir of his weeping. Family portrait in post-racial society with filter equating my olive skin to my brother's smoldering earth. My cousin, shouting Allahu Akbar out of irony after passing through the TSA without being quarantined for the first time. My father, before the toupee settled on his head mid-laugh, the country escaping from the gap in his front teeth. My head, freshly shaven for a melanoma biopsy, catching the Florida sunset, swim practice. The benign sunspot the doctors removed from my scalp, brown flesh patch floating in saline. Google Maps screenshot before the West Bank in Gaza were two patches of nameless flesh outlined in black dots. My teta, age 2, after being baptized in the Dead Sea, holds a seashell to her ear, a history lesson. My great-aunt's obituary reading, place of birth, Jerusalem, an Israeli flag waving over her open casket. Family portrait in Ramallah, full-toothed smiles at sunset, past or present. An olive tree and magnolia tree planted side by side overlooking a cemetery, mixing displaced soils. The Haifa skyline every time "So where's home for you" falls out of a stranger's mouth. A lifeguard pulls my 4-year knot corpse from the pool floor at my first swim lesson, second baptism. White man turns his back to drowning daughter at my community pool, a brief history of Israel-Palestine. A cell frozen mid-mitosis houses conflicting entities in a single membrane, two-state paradox. My biology teacher lectures on respiration, and I drown. So I'm gonna read a little chunk of a lyric essay I've been working on, actually. I don't get to really... Again, I'm trying to, experimenting and reading things I don't usually read at poetry readings, and lyric essay is something I'm really experimenting with and interested in. And I'm writing a lyric essay about the first time I got to visit Palestine, which was this past winter, and I'll just let it speak for itself. What you have to understand about 1948 is they not only destroyed our village, they destroyed our lives. Yaqub's voice crackling through the bus mic static almost resembled your grandfather's. The way he'd pause and let Yani bridge the countries in his sentences. Yani, this is my home, my childhood, my paradise. The bus shifts left to exit. Hebrew signs paint the side of the road as you approach the remains of Lifta. Mountainside speckled with stone remains, structures half standing, swallowed by overgrowth. Your moments begin to blur. First, the descent, steep, as if the land itself was beckoning your return. Then, the runoff. You see a man bathing in the desolate remains of a spring. Another Israeli man is reading a newspaper, sitting atop a boulder as if he didn't know a house once stood there. This is the house I grew up. That used to be the bakery downhill. Yaqub points onward as the rest of the class lags behind. In the distance, a building gapes like God smashed his fist down its frame in a temper tantrum. As you near the hill's bottom, Yaqub points to the opposing hillside. That hill, Yani, is where my father and his fathers were buried. The waste, Yani, sewage from Jerusalem runs down the hillside and erased his grave marker. And so you ask yourself, how many times has the state of Israel asked Palestinians to marvel at their own land's suicide? You reach the bottom. In the distance, there is a playground with a newly renovated park, speckles of white children running around. The government started building a new Israeli quarter at the base of our village. This is our land, but they want to pave over it. We are fighting them, Yani, and in the courts, but the construction has already begun. You ask again, how many times has the state forced Palestinians to abandon their own, to have their very conception of home erased? It is important to mention that on your way to the bus, Yaqub points out a hybrid tree species that produces both almonds and berries, calls it a genetic anomaly, a miracle of God. An elegy for my dead country. It is the anniversary of my country's death, our house empty of Arabic, Palestine still scrapes herself from my family tree, American, tongue transplanted, sweet land of olive grove turned magnolia blossom. In betraying her, we inherited another restless sea, the intersection of salt and fury. Nights I'd grasp sand in my palms, bitter fragments of shoreline erosion, centuries of displacement, and marvel at how slowly the premature and tessellated dead slipped in my fingers' grasp on this land where my fathers died. How easily one forgets the ghost body of a country rebuilt, of pilgrims' pride, her death, a God-sent colonization, a holy conquest, and blessed are the reclaimed, for they shall inherit the ghosts of themselves. A liberty of sorts, my country, my grave, my country, my open wound, my country, hallelujah of chasms to you. I sing praise for your histories rewritten, for love you found, long lost and submerged in restless substance. What is a country but a corrupted memory? What is an ocean but a stolen inheritance? Its freedom can drown you in the reclamation of it all, but it rings despite. Let freedom ring. Let it outlast the impermanence of you. Let freedom hold the weight of you in its jaws. Let freedom become its own country, of walled border, of grenade-speckled mountainside. Maybe you'll find God in this freedom. Maybe God will be his own type of Palestinian, hot-tempered, land-crowned. Even resurrections can leave you empty, palmed. Maybe God will show you how a country learns to walk on water, or how a country learns to swallow and erode its own, and even in betrayal and execution unholy, teach you what it means to fall in love with a country that was never yours to begin with. It's really interesting reading these here, and like I'm used to like reading these in front of an audience and like getting reaction, and now I'm seeing the comments like pop up, and like thank you all for your love and your support. I think that I'm gonna transition to another set of poems, and this set is interesting. Both of these poems I'm gonna read were inspired by Angel Nafis, in a prompt that she gave us one time at one of her shows, which is write an ode to an inconvenient thing. And there's a news report of this jellyfish, and it's called the Rhopalima nomatica jellyfish, and it's like indigenous to nowhere. It's an invasive species that shows up in the Mediterranean, and it actually like gets caught in Israeli power plants and really like fucks the shit up, and like, you know, they deserve it because like they don't give power to Palestinians or Gaza specifically. So I wrote an ode to the Rhopalima nomatica jellyfish. Bless the bitter soft tissue of your blue shell body, the consistency of shelter, the price of habitat, camouflage in undertow. You were salt before inception, and bless the scatter which flowers shipwrecks in your image, fractal dancing in radial symmetry. The poison only an ocean's inheritance can whisper into your filament and not call spine. Bless the way you unname yourself in every science and see too west swept to call indigenous. Your body, which contorts to negative spaces flux in its convolution. That you exist is to make diaspora of ebb and flow, no matter the turbulence, and for that, I might call you ancestor. Child Nidaria enough to be kin specimen of screaming synapse, of collapsed circuit chaos. Evolution skipped a generation and made an invasive species of you. Got Israelis picking your corpses from the teeth of their power plants. Execution by blackout. Blessed inconvenience. Skin sting on unrepenting feet who settle and linger in your waters as if you were a forgiving God. Bless the deformability that shakes its abuser's fists. Bless the territory which marks its prey. Every body turned electric at the sight of you. Every sin, a split consecration, a sacrificial hand, crucified in light. And this is a different ode to that same prompt. An ode to my swollen, mono-infected spleen. There's a weight in you that screams at unholy hours, and this is the first time you were led to believe your body not a chasm, when your gut becomes an ocean in love with its tempests, and the invisible islands swallowed whole in the wake of you. You've got the colonizers shaking in their boots. Every white thing trembles at the sight of the expansive planet you've become. There are parts you never knew existed until they occupied too much space. Until your own weight fills your hollowed frame, and everything inside you bursts and swells into a cacophony of organs and white blood cells. How could you expect to house all this fluid, all this turbulence and history without imploding? Don't they know you have a whole country in you? How can you expect completeness when home is a borderless entity? When you fit the infinite into a single body? How do they look at you and not see God in that swell and undertow? And the Goliath they made of that fist-sized organ? Or the Holy Ghost your immune system has become? They look at you and see a defenseless thing, a city in love with the carpet bomb's embrace. You ever look at a body on fire and see God in the burning? You ever sing hallelujah to an infected thing because it did not kill you? Because the battle made you feel so alive, you've forgotten the martyr your body has become. You're still unlearning the parts of you that shrivel and shrink beneath the confines of gravity, and you've begun teaching them to swell, to crash, to flood. Alrighty, let's see how I'm doing on time. Cool beans. Alrighty. I'm going to read one more poem. And then we can transition into Q&As. So start thinking about questions, and I'll start, answering. I'm really glad to see people tuning in, and thank you all for your generosity and for taking time out of your evening to do this and to see, little old me doing poems, little batata poems on your screen. I end with this poem a lot when I do readings, and it's because it's one of my favorites. And I will actually read the, So, in which Israeli parliament members compare Palestinians to snakes, so I become one. And for once, my throat unwinds itself. The constrictor releases its strangled prey. The staccato of my pulse softens until my tachycardia is a dampened undertone. Joy can be a raucous orchestra when the body empties itself of all its music, and you are reminded of your unbecoming again. Your blood, a boiling crescendo, knuckles, all brass symphony, but today, your melody won't be drowned out in all the hissing. Today, your laughter will be a paralyzing venom, and an entire room of Arabs will become symphony amidst the apocalypse. Today, you will thank Jess for existing. Hold Hasm tight for being alive. Today. Your melody of bared fangs and forked tongue will not speak death into a room of its descendants, as if Debke was just another way of slithering from its cold embrace. Today. You are the loudmouthed, harried, hot-tempered stereotype death made of you, and the whole white universe will shiver at the sight of you and Noor's selfie in a stormtrooper hat. The Arabs strike back. Maybe they call you terrorist because your words shake entire continents the way music shakes your bones from the inside out, and every earthquake and convulsion is just another excuse to praise the way we refuse to fall victim to our own good poison. Diaspora birthed a colony of snakes that survived their extinction, the way all cold-blooded animals learn to tame the heat around them. The only way to find home in a countryless world is to build it in each other. Call us fire swallowers, call us thick-skinned, call us failed post-colonial experimentation. We are your worst nightmares incarnate, and blessed are the venomous creatures who learn to dance amidst the flames. Thank you. So, thank you so much. Oh, I'm seeing all these lovely comments. Oh, you guys are so sweet. So now I will take, questions. just, yeah, ask anything, craft related or, whatever, elaboration on something. If you want to, you can ask, specific questions about poems I read or, just in general, what I'm doing, what I'm up to. And yeah, I would love to answer your questions for, however long we have. There's like a weird like delay between, the time of my ending and the time of like the comments popping up. So I'm seeing like all the comments pop up like I'm like, oh, that was from a poem I read like 2 minutes ago. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like as I said, what I'm working on now is I'm working on a full length manuscript, trying to work on the concept of what does it mean to find home and what does it mean to, exist in this world? Madeline. Okay, I see Madeline's question. So sometimes I feel guilty about writing into bitterness and spite. What are your thoughts on this? How do you use these things in your writing? Ooh, that's a good question. So like, I don't know. I feel like writing is sometimes can like, I think especially when we're talking about like marginalized and oppressed voices, right? We like are so into like, oh, you have to give people a narrative of uplifting. You have to like show people that, oh, I overcame insert struggles. This is how far I came. I gave like, and this really, I think it's a lot of pressure to be uplifting sort of. And I think it's like, people use like bitterness and pettiness in, specifically marginalized communities use that in like a defense mechanism sort of way. And I think it's like extremely valid. My ode to the Ropalima nomatica jellyfish, it's a legitimate ode, but it's like, in some ways it like, it fucks with oppressive systems. So for me, I'm like, cool, that's great. I'm going to write an ode to this. And like, one could view that as petty, but also one could view that as defense mechanism. And to me, that is an extremely valid, feeling to tap into, whenever, yeah. So Elizabeth's question, thank you for tuning in. I wonder if you've ever written an incredibly long poem, like a short epic. Yeah. Since this was such a short reading, I only read short poems, but most of my poems are actually really long. You hit it spot on. I love writing long poems. Specifically, there's a poem online. If you just Google George Abraham Against Consolidation, it's on Slamfind, it's on YouTube. Shout out to Mason Granger for recording it. It's like a 7-minute long poem, and it's a poem that is near and dear to my heart, and most of my poems are actually long. I would have read a longer poem, but it would have taken up half the set. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I love, I grew up in the slam world, which is weird because the slam scene tells us that we have to confine our poems to like 3 minutes long, and, slam poetry, it's like competitive spoken word poetry, for those of you who aren't familiar. And the rules of most competitions are just really strict time limits, and so a lot of people from the slam world come into the other literary world and write only 3-minute long pieces, and that's not conducive to like a lot of, narratives. Madeline's question, who are your recent inspirations? Ooh, good question. I think that the book I've read most recently, which impacted me the most, is Layli Long Soldier Whereas, which like I'm really crossing fingers for a win on the National Book Award. Layli or Janez, both awesome. Janez Smith's Don't Call Us Dead, also super awesome book I've read. I think that what stood out to me about Layli's book is about how she interacts with language and like the process of colonization, and how language has played a role, specifically like English language has played a role in dispossession and colonization. And I think she does this in a very unique way that I've never seen before. And I really I think it's just absolutely required reading. I've really liked, other than that, Jessris Kala's The Magic My Body Becomes, Marwa Hilal. She just came out with a chapbook. I think it's actually sold out, so like, yikes. Just Google Marwa Hilal poetry, and anything you read, you're gonna be amazed by. I recently read Kaveh Akbar's Calling a Wolf, which is, I'm sure that a lot of you have read that / are reading it. It's incredible. What else have I read recently? I just got Ruth Awad's new book. I'm really, really interested in it. I started reading it. Tommy Pico, Nature Poem. That is, very, very interesting. Again, just like doing a lot of really innovative work in like a way that's just very different in terms of like, the tone and like the mood of these poems are, just so like in its own universe, and like I really want to hone in on what it means to have like a voice, and I think that Tommy's work really exemplifies that. Let's see, Gigi. Oh, Gigi, hi. Let's see. I'm amazed by your ability. You have a knack for making every single word count. How do you find specificity, but honestly still be a badass? I can fit a million words into your poems, lols. No, you're so sweet. Champion of my heart. I think that specificity is actually like one of the most important lessons I learned, specifically transitioning from spoken word to the page, to like page poetry, whatever. I think it's all, fuck, genres and shit. I think it's all kind of one genre, and like, but at the same time, I think that when I made the transition and starting publishing my work more and focusing more on publishing than performance, I think a question I had to ask myself is like, what does every word mean? Like, okay, if I say like big keyword, like insert identity or insert, insert a mental illness or insert some kind of like big category, like, no, is there a more specific and like essential truth? So like, I think that my advice would be like, go through your poems, and specifically like when you're like looking at them like on a page sense, like, what do you need to say? Like, push every word in, like, sometimes that can lead you down a rabbit hole, and it could be a good or bad rabbit hole, but really just, like, questioning every single word, every single pause, things like that. I have a really, like, rigorous, like, detailed process when I look at these things. And I'm gonna go back to the, jellyfish poem again, like, the kind of just, like, there's a lot of weird scientific words in it that, like, came in subsequent drafts, and I'm like, I feel like specificity kind of pulled you into the world of, like, the jellyfish, and into, like, this, like, oceanic landscape that the poem needed to be pulled into there in order to function, and I was not, essentially the first draft of this poem was like, yeah, fuck you, and, it was like, not like what truth is there outside of that? How can I like say something new about diaspora and about that experience through this? And so yeah, that's always what I'm asking, like, what new questions am I asking, what new things am I answering? Oh, Janine, hi. As a child of Syrian Lebanese diaspora who wasn't raised too deeply embedded in my culture, real, well, I often feel a sense of fraudulent when attempting to address Arab issues. Same. As if my limited knowledge of my culture invalidates my right to investigate the Arab world. Have you had experience in imposter syndrome? If so, how did you convince yourself you deserve a seat at the table? That is a good question. And I think that specifically a lot of diasporic, not even Arabs, but just diasporic individuals, displaced from a homeland, or, whenever there's physical and metaphorical distance from a homeland, that's always, like, an issue that comes up, like, and I think that, like, going and, like, Actually, specific, I visited, my first visit to Palestine was really influential in the respect that, like, I saw the hyphen American in my identity, like, for the first time. And, like, when I think that there's, like, again, like, whenever I'm, like, writing about something that's less personal or, like, again, on the issue of Palestine, but not me specifically, it's just always, like, the question I always have to ask myself is, what does my experience contribute to that? How is, like, my specific, like, upbringing, my specific perception of this tangentially related thing, going to impact the dialogue and impact the discourse in a way that, like, no one else can. And that's kind of where I try to attack poems whenever there's that kind of dissonance, because it's like, okay, cool, I could write, another poem that's just about, like, insert vague Palestinian historical events, that could happen. But also, going back to my first poem, counterterrorism, like, it starts with the first Intifada, which, obviously I didn't live through. However, I think my angle with writing that poem specifically was the stigmatization of mental health as it intersects with Arab identity in the American context, and what it, like, the line between terrorism and counterterrorism, and how, like, counterterrorism historically is a form of terrorism, specifically within the United States sense. And I think that because of my own experiences with that stigmatization, that's the core of the poem. And, like, it starts off with a historical image, but that's not the point. The point is, like, the perception of that image, if that makes sense. And I feel like, subject matter is, like, obviously important when it comes to poems, but, like, the real truth comes through perception of subject matter. And perception, your perception is always going to be the culmination of your, of all of your experiences. And, whatever you have to say, it's valid. And it's, I've run into, other Arabs who've, like, just been like, oh, you don't, like, actually know, you're not fluent in Arabic, you're not, like, a real Arab. And, I just think that's, like, bullshit, and I think the reason that, again, like, the reason I wasn't taught Arabic was, going back to my earlier point, defense mechanism, and, coming to America and my family's experience with that. And so, in a way, this erasure, what we're going through is is erasure, and it's what we're going through is exactly what the colonizers want us to go through, and want us to feel this isolation and this disconnect from our homelands and from, from whatever we're trying to, call out in a colonial sense. And I think that coexists, that isolation coexists with appropriation. And, we always need to be checking ourselves, and we always need to be, again, making sure that we don't fall into that category of appropriating our own struggles or our family struggles too. So I think that those two forces can and do coexist. And, while it's important, like I said, while it's important to check ourselves, I think it's, like, equally important and valid to, understand that we're not alone in the world, and that, again, the colonizers want us to feel alone and thrive off of that. So, yeah, I've been answering questions for about 15, I was instructed to answer for about 15 minutes. If there are any last minute questions, I'll hang around for, like, a minute or two. Yeah, thank you all again for coming. Again, my chapbook is Al Yom, which is published by Atlas Review. So if you just Google Atlas Review, George Abraham, or just, go on Atlas Review's website, you can order it. Yeah, thank you all for having me so much. It was really an honor to read for you. And hope to see, you all in real life / at other events soon. Bye, y'all.